Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk some more about the Galactic Center. Specifically, I'm going to be recapping what I think the Galactic Center can mean, what I think the Galactic Anti-Center can mean, what I think the Super Galactic Center can mean, and what I think whatever opposes the Super Galactic Center can mean. And whatever opposes the Super Galactic Center, as I've said before, is something that I feel like I know the least about. I feel like I am getting a handle on it, but I feel like I know the least about that. So I wanted to do something like this just because there have been a couple people that have reached out wanting me to interview them or wanting to do their own Galactic Center diaries. So I wanted to kind of make a video about like where my mind is at with these different things. My mind may not stay here long term. I don't know. I may find through this research that is still going on, but will probably be going on a very long time. I may find that certain things don't fit after all, which is why I like to put the disclaimer that I'm just fucking with astrology. And the GC and the whole Galactic Grand Cross is such a wild card as it is. It really does feel this way. But I wanted to make something like this so people would know where my mind is at before I start asking them questions. And if you want to be interviewed, if you don't mind, if you feel like it, if you think it'd be fun, email me. I'll put my email below in the description box. And it's saturnseason@gmail.com. Let me know. And we can set something up to talk, do an interview. Oh, and I'll also be talking about the trines in this video because I do think that they're important, trines to the GC and sextiles to the Galactic Anti-Center. But I didn't go into those in my own Galactic Center diaries. I have one. I'll talk briefly about how I think it might manifest for me and kind of what I think they represent in general. Yeah, but of course it would, like everything, because the GC and the Galactic Grand Cross is such a wild card. I don't think that things conjunct the GC or conjunct the Anti-Center or whatever, I don't think that you can look at it and go, aha, it's always going to mean this when the Sun is conjunct the GC, or aha, it's always going to mean this when the Ascendant is conjunct the GC. I don't think anything in astrology is that cookie cutter, but I really don't think things conjunct the GC or anything within the Galactic Grand Cross are that cookie cutter. I just don't. It's way too much of a wild card. It just is. So anyway, but first I wanted to start out with how to pull this because somebody had mentioned in a comment that they didn't know how. I answered it, but I figured I haven't done this in a while, so they were curious how to pull the GC. You go to the extended chart selection on astro.com. And then you go down to additional objects. You'll click on additional objects and it'll bring you to a list of fixed stars. Click on the list of fixed stars. And then you'll go down to where it says GAL.center, Sag A, and you'll choose that option. And then you will click to create the chart or whatever it says down there. And then you'll pull your chart and the Galactic Center will show up in your chart. You can't pull the Galactic Anti-Center, so you just have to visually think that the Galactic Anti-Center is on the opposite end of the axis. And you can pull the Super Galactic Center. It is Messier 87 on the same list of fixed stars. Neither the Super Galactic Center or the Galactic Center are fixed stars, but they move very slowly like fixed stars, so I think that's why they get put on that list. But you can pull the Super Galactic Center. It is Messier 87. You cannot pull whatever opposes the Super Galactic Center. So again, you'll just have to visualize or imagine that it's there. So the Galactic Center itself, we'll start there. The Galactic Center is a big ass black hole where things are spaghettified. Anything that falls into it will be twisted and turned in such a way where it's pulled this way, pulled this way, pulled this way, to where when if it were to come back out the black hole or on the other side or whatever, it would be different. It would be changed. It would be transformed. It would be mutated. It would be distorted. It would be fucked with. It would be franken-fucked. Sometimes I feel, and this is, and I don't think the GC is a difficult thing. I have joked before that like my Venus and Uranus are franken-fucked because they do feel that way a lot of the time. but I do, but because things are changed, they change the way that the planet functions. This is why I've always felt like they have an affinity for retrograde energy and for out of bounds energy, because out of bounds energy, out of bounds planets, if you have a planet out of bounds, it will change how that planet functions. That planet becomes much more of a wild card. Same thing with retrograde energy. Retrograde energy turns the planetary energy inward instead of outward, which also changes the energy. That's why it's always the GC has always felt kind of retrograde-y and out of boundsy to me, or like it has an affinity for this. Which is why earlier in the research I was really looking at both of these, and I still am, but that's why it caught my attention early on. So any planet or planets that happen to conjunct the GC are going to be changed. They are going to be changed. Now, the GC is also a place where things are born. So while this spaghettification occurs and this distorting and this mutating and this change and transformation and electrifying or charging, it does birth something new, but it really does have to do with the way the person feels about that planet and kind of their perception of it. I think perception does play in here a little bit. Like, okay, like if you have Mercury conjunct the GC, this may not be universal, but I have noticed from a lot of the people that have Mercury conjunct the GC in the research, they tend to talk about Mercury in more of a way that's retrograde. Like the way that they talk about it feels kind of like a way that Mercury retrograde functions, or a way that or that somebody might explain having Mercury retrograde. So this has kind of led me to think that planets conjunct the GC, and obviously the closer to being exactly conjunct the GC something is, the more this will be felt. But it does kind of make me think that planets conjunct the GC that are direct might function more like retrograde planets. At the same time, though, I might think that planets that are retrograde conjunct the GC might actually function more direct. Yeah. So that's kind of my theory anyway at this point. That's kind of what I'm going with, or kind of where my mind is going, just from my own personal experience and from reading about other people. I don't know that it'll stay there, but and same thing with out of bounds. Like, it also seems like planets that are, say, not out of bounds, but are conjunct the GC might kind of function more like an out of bounds planet. And I might even say that planets that are out of bounds conjunct the GC, which actually does seem to be somewhat common to have out of bounds planets conjunct the GC, it might actually cause them to function a little less out of bounds because of the change, the transformation, all of these kinds of things. So it kind of seems to flip it, to transform it. Now, again, this might not be universal, but this is something that I have noticed. There is also the notion of downloads that I know people have mentioned, and I know that I mentioned it too. That does seem to be a pretty common theme in different ways. The downloads do seem to come through in some way, like the planet conjunct the GC, or something having to do with that, what the planet needs to express. That's kind of how they come. That is, again, not universal, but it is something that I've noticed, specifically from the people who have done like the questionnaire, that seem to have a pretty good handle on astrology as it is. And you don't have to have a good handle on astrology to do the questionnaire, but the ones that do, the way they talk about it, it kind of seems that way. Also, there is something that does feel rather protective about the GC. There does. Now, I do think that the protection is amplified if somebody has Jupiter retrograde in their chart. And I mentioned that because of the thing that I did on whistleblowers, when I started going down that rabbit hole. and truth tellers, truth seekers, this kind of, or whatever truth is was to them or is to them. It did seem like those that, and this again probably isn't universal, but it does seem like the ones that have Jupiter, planets conjunct the GC and Jupiter retrograde, were able to do this in a way where they were somehow protected. So while I do think the GC is protective, I think if you've got Jupiter retrograde in your chart, Jupiter is the planetary ruler of Sagittarius, which is where the GC is. That's why I'm focused on Jupiter retrograde here. it does seem like it adds another layer of protection. At least in my research of the, like the whistleblowers and the truth tellers and things like that. The ones that are known anyway. The ones that are known for doing this in some capacity. So there are other things about the GC, but that's kind of just quickly. I'll move on now to the anticenter, the galactic anticenter. This is a much calmer area of the sky. The GC is lots of fucking energy. Galactic anticenter, very calm. It is blinded. I think it is a blinded area of the chart. Because in the sky, it's next to a very bright star named LNath. And there's a lot of space dust around. So I do think that planets conjunct the galactic anticenter are, or could be, kind of blinded to the person. Not completely blinded, not totally unconscious like 12th house stuff. Not like that. It's not like that. But I do think that there is some blinding going on. Just because while that star is very bright in the sky, it's not lighting up the galactic anticenter. It's like shining and no, you can't see the galactic anticenter kind of thing. It's also in the galactic anticenter is also in something called the zone of avoidance, which makes it hard to see from Earth. So there is kind of I don't know, there does feel like there is a blinding there. And this may, you know, I mean, obviously we want to feel, and all of the planets or asteroids or, you know, hypothetical points or what have you in the chart. Sometimes this might be more difficult than others, though. I mean, it just kind of depends on what is going on there. But like, let's say you had your moon conjunct the galactic anticenter, and it was, and this goes on because I'm using an orb of 10 degrees applying and separating for all of these conjunctions. I know that's wide. I probably won't stick with that in the long run, but this could put you having your having a conjunction to the galactic anticenter anywhere from like 16 Gemini to 6 Cancer. The closer it is, I think the closer it is to exact, I think the more blinded it might be. So if it's, okay, let's say you've got your moon there, that could mean there's something that's blinded about your emotions, or something blinded about what you nurture, something blinded about, you know, those sorts of things. If you have your sun there could be something kind of blinded about your concept of identity or ego or life force. Venus there could be like there's something blinded about your values or what you love. There's some, you know, it's not like it's not a lack of clarity. It's not unconscious, you know, it's not unconscious. It's not like the 12th house. It's just kind of hazy. Let's call it like hazy because there is like space dust around there. So it's just more hazy than anything. Now the trines to the GC and sextiles to the galactic anticenter, which would fall anywhere from like 16 Aries to 6 Taurus, or 16 Leo to 6 Virgo. I think that the trines are a harmonious or easy way to bring stuff from the GC, like downloads or even protection or whatever, down to Earth. And I'll link the video that I did about the trines because I go into why. I won't do all that here, but there is a reason why I'm saying the trines specifically. But I think it's a way to bring all that down to Earth to actually do something with it. So it does feel like if you've got conjunctions to the GC, having a trine there is really nice. Because like if you've got conjunctions to the GC, but there's no trine, I do wonder what happens with everything going on there. It feels like there's less of a way to bring it down to Earth. Not that you can't bring it down to Earth, it just feels harder. And at the same time, that same trine, right, would be a sextile to the galactic anticenter. Now, I think the galactic anticenter does get shocked. I mentioned that in a couple of videos. I think it gets shocked by the overflow of energy from the GC, shoots over to the anticenter and shocks the shit out of it. If you've got a planet there, that planet acts as a lightning rod and like gets the shit shocked out of it. Now, what I think the trine does, or sorry, the sextile does, it grounds it. I think it does ground it. It gives the energy somewhere to go, so it's not just shocking the shit out of that planet, but there's a way to ground it. And again, to do something with it, to do something with the shocking. And I won't go into mine. I do have a trine. I'm going to pull my chart. I do have a trine to the GC. I have Jupiter retrograde. It's trining it. It's within like 5 degrees or 6 degrees. Which does, so I know that Jupiter retrograde is already important in my chart. It's my chart ruler. But that Jupiter retrograde in the 4th house in Aries does kind of give, it's important in my chart for not only because it's my chart ruler, but because it gives me a way to ground Chiron getting shocked at the anti-center, and it is able to do something with all the energy at the GC. So if you've got stuff conjunct the GC, conjunct the anti-center, either or, and you have a trine to the GC or a sextile to the anti-center, definitely understand those planets or that particular planet or what have you. I think it's very important for you to understand. I do. I think it's really important. Because that does seem like it's the way to bring the stuff from the GC down to Earth and to ground when planets conjunct the anti-center get shocked. And I do think they get shocked. I just do. Something will shock them and wake them up. And even if it's a good shocking, a shocking that needs to happen, a shocking that is beneficial, having something to ground that shocking is good. It's good. I think it does help the adjustment, if you will. Then the super galactic center, I do feel like this is a massive fucking black hole, even bigger than the GC. I do think that stuff conjunct the super galactic center. I think the super galactic center can be a lot about balance, kind of falling into a black hole of trying to balance. It could be a black hole of indecision. It could be a black hole, of compromise, compromising yourself, depending on what's going, what is conjunct that. But, and who knows, maybe this is something that you actually do need to lean into, right? It could be, or it might be something that you need to learn how to balance with other things, relationships are another thing. Perhaps getting sucked into them too much. It would depend on what planet we're talking about and, or what planets or what have you. But there is definitely like a sucking into a black hole with these things that can happen. The download thing also, people have said that they do get downloads and stuff in a similar way that people have talked about with the GC. So, and then very quickly, the whatever opposes the super galactic center. This to me is the one that I don't understand right now as much. Because it's got to be opposite from what the super galactic center is. So it is probably much calmer, or calmer in the sense that there's not a lot going on there in the sky. I think that's possible. But it does kind of feel like falling into blank space. It really does. At least in my personal experience. I'll be curious to hear more people that have planets conjunct whatever opposes the super galactic center, what they have to say about planets there, from their personal experience. I will be curious to hear what they have to say in that regard, because of course how that plays out depends on what the fuck planet we're talking about. But this is kind of where my mind is at. If anybody would like to, again, if anybody wants to be interviewed, let me know. Shoot me an email. That's fucking loud. Holy shit. Sometimes those planes fly really, really loud. Anyway, I'm going to get going because this one got kind of long. But I will put my email below and where you can find me otherwise. Okay, I will see y'all later.